I'm just gonna get a few chocolate chips while I wait. If I didn't get to your question, ask it again, please, and thank you. I was just saying that if I didn't get to your question, please ask it again. I know I get quite behind because I go off on tangents. I'm just having a few chocolate chips while you join and ask your questions. These chocolate chips are so good. I got these ones at Target, but I got these other ones at Sprouts, and they were like twice the size, and it was just such a perfect size of chocolate chip. It was massive. Okay, I started taking vitamin E, but was curious what is the difference between tocotrienols versus tocopherols. Is one better than the other? Not sure where to get reliable info on this. Yeah, so there's quite a lot of debate about this. I personally haven't been able to figure out what the research points to. So a good variety is best. The only thing you want to make sure is your vitamin E is not synthetic and it is naturally derived. There's a huge difference between synthetic vitamin E and naturally derived vitamin E. So that's really the only thing that we want to make sure. But mixed tocopherols is usually the best bet because that's what you want. You want to make sure you're getting everything. Women for PCOS need to use prenatal to get pregnant. No, they don't need to use a prenatal to get pregnant. I don't like prenatals because they're usually really high in iron. Good way to have a baby that has jaundice. Thoughts on organic but hormone-free, antibiotic-free but grain-fed meats? Why do we live in a culture where this is a thing, right? So not exactly grass-fed, but like chicken, beef, pork. Okay, so when it comes to chicken, beef, pork, we have to remember that what they eat is going to make up and constitute their tissues. So if they're not eating what they're supposed to be eating, for example, cows eat grass, chicken eat usually like seeds. They pick things out of the ground, but they also like bugs. They're omnivores. And then pigs, I don't really know what their natural food is, but I know that they eat quite a bit. So they're going to eat, I think they're omnivores as well. So, but somebody who knows, correct me if I'm wrong. I just know that if pigs are eating lots of PUFAs, their fatty tissues are going to be full of PUFAs. So bacon, PUFAs. Pork belly, PUFAs. But if you're doing like a lean cut of pork that doesn't really have a lot of fat in it, it's probably going to be more purely protein. So it just really depends on what type of meat you're eating. But, overall, it's better if the cow or the pig or the chicken is eating their native diet and you're getting as close to that as you possibly can. Personally, I have a very difficult time finding pasture-raised chicken, and so I do the best I can, and I buy organic, and I don't eat chicken a lot. But I do splurge on the grass-fed beef because I know that it has such good saturated fats in it for me, and there's no nutritional comparison between organic beef and grass-fed beef. Two completely different foods. If a beef is, or if a cow is corn-fed, it's going to be so different nutritionally than a grass-fed cow. With that being said, you do the best you can with what you afford. There was just a time that I just bought the organic ground beef at Costco, and I let it be enough. And that's the thing. You just kind of have to do the best you can. With pork, it's very difficult to find properly pastured pork. And so I tend to avoid it or just choose things that are going to be very low fat cuts of pork. Any advice for keratosis pilaris? I have it on arms and legs all over. Oftentimes this is like inflammation and a nutritional issue. Usually vitamin A plays a role, vitamin K. Personally, I used aspirin to get rid of my keratosis pilaris. It's pretty bad right now. I haven't taken aspirin in like 3 weeks. And so you guys can see it a little bit. But it used to be purple. When I first got diagnosed with PCOS, I had like purple KP all over my arms and all over my legs. Now it comes and goes with my inflammation and my ability to be consistent with aspirin and vitamin K2. And if I'm consistent with my raw carrot salad, those types of things. I do think it has a bacterial gut component and then an overall like inflammation component, something with prostaglandins, because aspirin tends to get rid of it for me or get it down. I also got these, so if you guys have ever seen, I'm a weirdo, so just, FYI, you guys already know that, but I found these, what are they? They're a traditional Korean spa uses these weird little like hand gloves, and you can totally YouTube videos of this. It's so gross, and they're like kind of like this like skin sandpaper. And what you do is you wet your skin. You're in the shower, a warm shower, and then as your skin softens, you start to like scrub with these Korean hand towels. And oh my gosh, the most disgusting thing happens. Your skin starts just like peeling off of you. And so, long story short, I would use that once a week, and then I would spray my aspirin spray. I put aspirin, niacinamide, and caffeine. It's the same spray I use for my scalp on that. Once I do that, like that scrubbing, I get that dead skin off, and smooth as a baby's bottom, baby. Smooth as a baby's bottom. I just get kind of lazy, and sometimes I don't do that. But when I do that consistently, and I'm really good about gut health, and I'm really good about taking my aspirin, my KP is pretty much non-existent. Do you still recommend aspirin? If so, how much milligrams and how often? I never recommend aspirin. That's something you definitely have to do on your own. Do your own research. Make sure it's right for you. That's not something that I personally recommend. I take it for sure. I do just a regular adult-sized dose dissolved in warm water, and I always make sure I pair it with a milligram of vitamin K. Because remember, aspirin is a blood thinner. Even though it lowers inflammation and prostaglandins pretty well, it is a blood thinner. So you want to make sure you're not depleting yourself of vitamin K. And then it can have a gut irritation kind of response if you're deficient in glycine, which is why gelatin, bone broth, collagen rich foods are very important. What organ meats do you like to consume, and how do you consume them? Finding it hard to enjoy beef liver, so I've been blending it and taking it like a shot. Thank you for answering all these questions. That's a really good idea. That's really gross, but also a great idea. I know beef liver is not the most delicious thing. Personally, I will like saute onions and saute bacon, and then I will either like bake it with those things, or I will just saute it with those things. It's not the best, but it gets the job done. It's not my favorite thing to eat, honestly, though. I personally will take grass-fed beef liver capsules more than I will eat it, and so I'll do grass-fed beef liver capsules. I really want to try beef heart. I really want to try beef kidney. Some people like those. And then there is U.S. Wellness Meats. You can order online. They have a liverwurst, which is like heart, kidney, and liver all mixed together and put into like a sausage-like component, I guess. So I kind of want to try that. A lot of people say they feed that to their kids, and their kids really like it. So I was like, if a child can eat this, I can eat this, but it's not my favorite thing. I still am trying to figure out how I want to consume it. My favorite way right now is just to freeze it into capsules and swallow it like a pill. Thank you. What do you think about excess phlegm in the morning? Boyfriend has to cough it up every morning. I think that has to do a lot of times with bacteria. I guess we call it postnasal drip, and phlegm usually has a lot to do with what's going on in the sinuses, and what's going on in the sinuses has a lot to do with what's going on in our digestive tract. So I've had a few clients use something called X-Clear, which tends to help keep the bacteria at bay. I don't know how that would help you, but phlegm is usually a multi-layered issue that has a lot to do with gut health. Not sure if you've seen Organic Olivia stories, but would you recommend switching green tea for oral and gut health? No. I mean, it is antibacterial in a sense of like very slightly, but I think I like her. Don't get me wrong. I think she's really cute. But she kind of like, I love when people are naturally minded, but I really dislike when they like miss the goal. Like there's a target and it's just like being missed, it's like miss. So she has a lot of good supplements, lots of things like that. But personally, things like that, if you want to do it, great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I just think it's kind of like annoying and obnoxious to do all these weird things, these weird practices, when we're not fundamentally getting what we need, which is, our protein, the right type of carbohydrates, nourishing our bodies properly, those types of things. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But I personally would prefer to do oil pulling with coconut oil for oral health than over green tea. Women with PCOS need to use prenatal to get pregnant, ? Like is a good choice. I personally don't like prenatals. I don't like iron in prenatals. I don't think we need it. We tend to be pretty iron toxic. I personally like grass-fed beef liver instead. We can take that both encapsulated or eat it fresh. That's a personal choice. I'm new to your work and I think it's so refreshing. Is this time of self-isolation a good time to implement big health changes, especially since I'm not able to grocery shop frequently? I think that's really up to you. It's one of those things where, a lot of times we do this thing where we're like, I'm changing my life, and you overhaul everything. And at this point, I'm like, just implement what you can. If you can't implement certain things, don't stress about it, but try to implement the things that you could maybe change over. Like, right now is a good time to aim to try to get enough protein, maybe get a casein protein supplement off of Amazon and make a protein shake with that every day with some fresh frozen fruit. There's a lot of frozen fruit that's available for the most part. You can get creative with it, and if you can get your hands on some high quality milk, great, you can make your protein shake, and that really gets you a little closer to your protein goals, 25 grams of protein in that. So it's really just about small health changes for the overall big picture. I don't think it's a good idea to try to overhaul everything and get really frustrated because you can't find what you need. But at the same time, there's no better time than the present to start implementing small health changes, regardless of what's going on. But I think, some of us have a lot of time on our hands to make some health changes. So what better time when you're home? And that doesn't necessarily have to be food related. That can be going for a walk in the fresh air. I mean, I don't know where you live. So if you live in somewhere like New York City, you maybe can't do that. But, getting outside, getting a walk, maybe picking up a new hobby, reading a book, those types of things. You can get an adult coloring book. You can, learn a language. There's so many things we can do. And right now, just taking a step back and letting ourselves relax. You can't go to work. Well, most of us can't. So what better time to kind of take a step back and de-stress rather than constantly being stressed about the situation that we're in. Just taking advantage of the time, because the world will go back, and we will have to go back. And I think a lot of us will look back and be like, wow, I didn't take advantage of that time and see what I was being offered. Personally, I'm still doing a lot of work. I'm used to working at home, and so it's not much different for me. But I can see how people that go to work every day probably feel really busy a lot of the time. And so being home is like, oh my gosh, I have all this time. What can I be doing? And what better, time to maybe implement some small changes or think about how you're going to implement small changes, in the near future. Should you have dinner at a certain time before bed, like a few hours or more? I don't know. I personally will eat dinner and then we'll eat a snack 30 minutes before bed. I do, Fully Nourished, my online program has a bedtime snack in it. We want to keep blood sugar balanced throughout the evening. And if we eat too far before we go to bed, our blood sugar is usually going to drop at some point in the evening, usually by early morning, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And then once our blood sugar drops, our liver has to kick in and start manufacturing us sugar. And that's when we're waking up in a really high stress state. So it's better to keep your blood sugar balanced all night long and eat a nice snack before bed. I ate a raw carrot every day with no issues, and the other day I added MCT oil to it, and it caused weird pounding pain in the mouth of my stomach. Why could that be? MCT oil is caprylic acid, so it is very antifungal and antibacterial, so that could be a possibility. That's what comes to mind. MCT oil, if you've never had it before or you've never used it before, it can cause a rough reaction on the digestive tract for sure. But yeah, it is usually pure caprylic acid, which is very antifungal. Have you tried castor oil for thinning hairline, eyebrows? No. Personally, I don't think castor oil is as effective as using something like vitamin E oil or progesterone, or vitamin E and progesterone for stimulating hair growth, or like aspirin. Nettle root is also great, or like peppermint and rosemary are really good essential oils to stimulate hair growth at the hairline. So getting like one of those little roller bottles, if you're trying to just stimulate like hairline growth, getting a little roller bottle and putting maybe like some MCT oil in it, or a little olive oil or something like that, and then putting like a couple drops of progesterone and vitamin E and a couple drops of rosemary and peppermint, and I'm sure that would stimulate hair growth pretty well. I don't know for sure. Pee a lot during day and night. Even if I stop drinking water, I'm supporting my adrenals, lowering stress. Sometimes it can just take time. It can just take time to start seeing changes in that adrenaline response, because keep in mind, sometimes we're in that adrenaline state for years before we realize it, and when we start to implement changes, we sometimes expect our body to react like that, but it can definitely take some time. You would just eventually want to see yourself maybe not peeing so much throughout the day. Do you recommend iodine supplementation? It's very hard to get the info on this. Some people swear by it, some people not so much. Yeah, it's one of those things where you have to be informed. I don't think supplementing iodine first is a good idea. It never is, because oftentimes we have other minerals that are very imbalanced that need to be adjusted and addressed first. For example, oftentimes our sodium and our potassium levels are very low, magnesium levels quite low, calcium levels either really high or really low, and all those things are going to affect how iodine affects us. A lot of women are iodine deficient, but you should know that you're iodine deficient before you take it. But if you want to learn more about iodine deficiency and iodine supplementation, check out the book by Dr. Brownstein called Iodine, Why You Need It and Why You Can't Live Without It. And it's a really, really informative book. Personally, I don't implement iodine with clients until their sodium and potassium levels are balanced and they've been taking vitamin C for a couple of months. Also, selenium and zinc are some other things to kind of keep in mind. They shouldn't be low before you supplement iodine. Thank you for all the info. Just to clarify, I do only take hydrochloric acid with meals, not snacks, so just wanted to make sure 3 hours is enough time between the pills. Yeah, I would assume so. Yeah. Hey, would you recommend a specific topical for someone with a yeasty scalp while they work on the root internally? Asking for a coworker. If I was struggling with a yeasty scalp, I would get flowers of sulfur from, I think you can buy it from, I think the company is called Frontier Co-op or something like that. Some type of herbal company, but it's like flowers of sulfur. It's literally sulfur powder that you can buy. It's yellow. It smells like sulfur. Oh, it is straight up sulfur powder. And I would mix that in something like shampoo or some type of like maybe rinse or maybe a spray, and just spray it on my scalp before I go to bed. It stinks, so you might have to like change your pillowcases a lot and wash it off in the morning, but flowers of sulfur kills yeast like no one's business. Better than anything I've come across. Apple cider vinegar might work as well. That is something to kind of that would probably work as well. Or even like I think they have like antifungals that you can buy at the drugstore. I have melasma. I know that certain hormones cause more melanin production. Do you know what those hormones are and what I could do to help keep my melasma at bay? Melasma is usually driven by estrogen and polyunsaturated fat intake. So if you're intaking a lot of polyunsaturated fats, or grew up on that, or ate a lot, and then grew up on a lot of iron fortified foods that had way too much iron, way more than we needed, if we ate Captain Crunch every day, or shredded wheat, or those types of things, so much iron in those foods. And then we implement estrogen, whether it's in this form of the birth control pill, or we just have too much and too little progesterone. That's kind of a recipe for melasma, in my opinion. So the goal is to get our own production of progesterone up, help our bodies detoxify estrogen and carry estrogen out properly, and make sure we're getting all the right fats. Focus on like saturated animal fats and stay away from crappy like nut and seed fats. Recipe for your aspirin caffeine spray, please. I don't really have like a recipe. I just take a spray bottle, warm water, crush up aspirin. I buy caffeine capsules off of Amazon. You can literally buy like powdered caffeine, and I just open up the capsules. I usually use bulk supplements. They have like pretty cheap, just pure supplements. And then I just will shake that bottle up and dissolve the aspirin in the hot water and the caffeine in the hot water. And then just spray it right on the scalp. Hey Jess, been a while since I could watch part of your live while live. Yay! It's so good to have you, Gina. It's been busy, but my gut is slowly getting better weekly. Yay! Gina's been working on her gut a ton. Do grain-fed organic chicken is considered normal if they eat more like seeds and such? Yeah, oftentimes they're going to feed them soy and corn, unfortunately. It's hard to find chickens that are fed like nut and seed feed, or like hulls of things, like they'll feed them like peas or stuff like that. But you kind of have to do the best with what you have when it comes to chicken, because it's hard to find chickens that are taken care of properly. Beef hearts are my fave. They're just wow. Yeah, I definitely want to try them. I have this like weird, I think it's like a mental thing in regards to organ meats. I just have to get over it, and I will at some point. I'm not quite there yet. Like, I'm there, but when I go, like, I don't know if I could like slice a beef heart steak and not act like I'm not gagging. You know what I mean? Is this a good time to get off birth control? I don't know. Is it? That's a question that you have to ask yourself. Can you share some supplements over regimen we should all be taking to support our health? It just really is very dependent on the person. I think a lot of people can do a lot of good with like making sure they're getting grass-fed beef liver in at least once a week, making sure you're getting oysters in once a week, whether it's in the form of fresh or smoked, doing the raw carrot salad every single day. A lot of people do really well with some vitamin E or vitamin K, but when it comes to supplementation, it really does need to be tailored to the individual, and I usually am just recommending nutrient-dense foods and food-like components over specific supplements, because supplements truly need to be tailored to the individual and the individual's needs. There's not like a blanket like, oh, like everyone needs all of these things. Any thoughts on where to start healing someone with endometriosis? Yeah, so the goal with endometriosis is to first eliminate all possible endocrine disruptors that are coming in the diet. Clean up cleaning products, clean up hygiene products, no toxic deodorant, shampoos, things like that. If makeup's toxic, toss it out. Because environmental toxins affect endometriosis horribly. And so those are the first things that need to be out before you focus on getting the good stuff in, because if that's constantly bombarding the body, then there's really you're going to find no relief. Another big offender is going to be plastic water bottles. Drinking from plastic water bottles is a huge no-no. Get a water filter and drink from like a stainless steel bottle or a glass bottle. But plastic water bottles, I pretty much say plastic water bottles kill, because they are they have so much endocrine disruptors in them. And then the goal with endometriosis is twofold. Help the body detoxify estrogen, because oftentimes there's so many studies showing that endometriosis, women that struggle with endometriosis are estrogen, their detoxification of estrogen is impaired. There's so much success using aromatase inhibitors with women with endometriosis for this reason. And so we gotta make sure estrogen detoxification is fully functioning, fully open. So liver needs to be supported. The gut needs to also be supported. Remember, endotoxin is made from bacteria in the gut. Endometriosis, they are related. So we want to make sure that endotoxin is being lowered. Things like raw carrot salad, sometimes activated charcoal can be helpful. But raw carrot salad every single day does tend to be helpful. And then reducing overall load of things that are going to increase endotoxin. So lots of fermentable fibers, lots of soy, lots of nuts and seeds, things like that don't tend to help women with endometriosis at all. And so figuring out what foods need to be eaten for better gut health is so important. Sometimes like a spore-based probiotic can be very helpful, things that are going to reduce endotoxin. And then getting progesterone levels up. whether that's naturally or through like bioidentical supplementation. Just make sure you kind of talk to your doctor about that. Can really make a difference because progesterone has that anti-estrogen effect. And of course, we have estrogen. It is playing a huge role in endometriosis. But yeah, it is similar to PCOS in the sense of like PCOS is usually driven by very similar things, but the body's expressing it in two different ways. But women with endometriosis particularly seem to be very sensitive to environmental toxins and environmental estrogens, and then they tend to be a little bit more gut impaired. And then remember, there's a lot of research coming out showing that the uterus has its own microbiome, and I think that that's playing a huge role in endometriosis, that there's some type of bacterial issue going on in the uterine tissue, in the uterine lining, the endometrial lining, because why would antibacterial substances like oregano and berberine be shown to clinically improve endometriosis outcomes? It makes sense. It makes sense. So it's definitely a bacterial component and then an estrogen component. That's a long story short. Hi Jessica, do you do online consultations? Yes, I do. I'm taking new clients right now. I'm taking a few. So I'll do an announcement on that like the end of this week, early next week. But just send me a DM and let me know that you're interested, and I can give you some information on that. Could you do a what I eat in a day video? Your food posts are so helpful. Yeah, of course. Sometimes I forget because I just like eat very similar things during the day. Like I eat pretty boring. I've been really obsessed with making this like frittata. It's just like I literally take 2 or 3 eggs, I scramble them, and all the while I'm cooking, I cut up potatoes into little tiny cubes, and I'm cooking them in coconut oil or grass-fed butter in the pan with some onions. And then once they're all cooked up, I just like pour my eggs over them. I cover the pan up, let it like puff up. It becomes this like big poof. And then it like will settle, and then I just like dump it on my plate and drizzle it with ketchup, and that's like been my breakfast pretty much every single day. I've been like obsessed with that. I'm dealing with severe anxiety and depression. Oh, I'm really sorry that you're dealing with that. Usually there is a component hormonally and gut-wise that needs to be addressed. Sometimes people just need to eat more and eat a little bit more frequently, and that takes care of a lot of the imbalances. We have to kind of think of anxiety and depression more as like a state of being rather than I guess like a mental illness, because a lot of times that's what people are being told, like you have a mental illness, and I think it's more of a state of being. You know, think of anxiety as, you know, in a survival state, how are you going to act? Let's say you were running from an angry bear or a tiger, right? You would be like on edge all the time. You'd be like worried about everything that's coming at you. You'd be really jumpy and really worried because you're being chased, right? And so I think that anxiety is definitely a state of being. Definitely stuck in that fight or flight state, and we need to get out of that state for sure. But yeah, I can do another what I eat in a day. I do them kind of here and there, but I can definitely do them. I should do them every day. I just eat very similar things every day. Pretty much what I do is I get obsessed with like eating the same thing every day for breakfast, lunch, and then dinner kind of will vary. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I want a new breakfast. And I have that same thing for like literally like 3 weeks. Or I'll like switch things out. So, right, like I have that egg frittata thing, and then I've been doing my milk powder pancakes, and I literally will have like, I'm like, I feel like milk powder pancakes for breakfast today, and then I'm going to do my egg frittata for lunch. And then like tomorrow I'm like, ooh, I'm going to mix it up and have my milk powder pancakes for breakfast, or my milk powder pancakes for lunch and my eggs for breakfast. So it's just like I get kind of repetitive with my food. Is meat fat okay for PCOS? Yeah. We need saturated fats, guys. Plant fats are toxic and they cause insulin resistance. And so I will continue to preach this from my box, but we have to be getting animal fats in our body. Those are the only heat stable fats. Coconut oil is the only really plant fat that I can think of that's really heat stable, and I guess like cocoa butter as well. But really it's going to be ghee, grass-fed butter, and you know, the occasional fat from our meats as well. Nut seed oils are crap, but I can eat nuts and seeds, right? Nut and seed oils are absolute crap, like canola oil, soybean oil, even fish oil. nuts and seeds are very, it's very dependent on the person. Nuts and seeds are very immunosuppressive. They are not an ancestral food unless you're actually purchasing nuts and seeds that are in their shell. So really, we're eating these rancid nuts and seeds, because if you're buying, for example, walnuts in a big bag that have all been shelled and they've been sitting on a shelf in a clear plastic bag, they have been exposed to light, oxygen, and possibly heat. And if they haven't been exposed to heat, they will be exposed to heat the minute they hit your 98.6 degree body. And so therefore, those fats will oxidize and create free radicals and are immunosuppressive and inflammatory. And so when I'm trying to get somebody's hormones balanced, I'm trying to get them there the quickest possible way. And mixing the nuts and seeds is going to definitely be a quick shortcut to getting there. And it tends to have other effects, like, oh wow, my intestines needed that break, thank you very much, you know. So nuts and seeds are hard to digest. They have those kind of crappy fats. They're totally fine in moderation for most women, but some women just need to not be eating them. And a lot of times we crave nuts and seeds because we're actually not eating the right types of foods. Like a lot of women who cut dairy, for example, start to pound nuts and seeds because they're, you know, starving for those really good fats. And so their body's trying to find a cheap imitation when they really just need, you know, dairy. So I find that a lot of people that are on like paleo diets or autoimmune paleo or whatever, they are craving so many of these like nuts and seeds and foods like that because they're the only calorie dense source of food they're getting. And so it's just really sad to see. So nuts and seeds, I'm not saying they're bad to eat, but we definitely need to evaluate how many we're eating in our daily diet for sure. Can you discuss PCOS? I've been struggling to lose weight. I've controlled my acne and hair loss, but I still don't have my period. I just did an amazing podcast with Matt Blackburn on Mito Life Radio, and it's going to go live on Friday. And we literally talked about PCOS, birth control, fertility for almost 2 hours. It was so amazing, and I think that you'll really enjoy that episode, so stay tuned for that. I will announce it on my stories on Friday. But yeah, PCOS is very misunderstood, and so many women are eating way too many, you know, they're not nourishing themselves properly, unfortunately, because PCOS culture tells them, you know, switch out your dairy for nuts and seeds, and, you know, make all your things out of almond flour, and drink your gross nut milks, and, you know, cut sugar and cut meat and cut dairy, and now you're not getting any of the nutrients you need to ovulate and be fertile, and so it's just really a mess. So I can definitely dive into that deeper, but definitely listen to that podcast. I had a doctor tell me she suspected PCOS or endometriosis, but wasn't able to fully diagnose. How can you really differentiate between the two? Maybe by painful period symptoms. Often, endometriosis needs to be, I believe, diagnosed via laparoscopy, whereas PCOS usually gets diagnosed with intravaginal ultrasound and blood testing. So if she did neither, then of course she couldn't differentiate. What are your thoughts on counting macros through MyFitnessPal? If you know what you're doing, if you know what your goal is, then it can be helpful. But if you have a tendency to be disordered eater, have an eating disorder, a full-blown eating disorder, whether you know about it or not, are orthorexic, so you have a tendency to start being obsessive, so you obsess about the numbers. Like, if you're going to be someone that says, like, oh my god, I was supposed to eat 1,700 calories, but I ate 1,800, and, like, you're like, oh my god, I'm going to be fat, then you shouldn't be counting macros on MyFitnessPal. I'm all about counting macros in an empowered way. There should never be something called a calorie maximum. It should always be about a calorie minimum. And then our goal is to hit our individual macronutrients. We want to make sure we're nourishing ourselves properly and we're empowered by how we're nourishing. For example, if we're not getting enough protein in a day, we want to know that, because that means it's going to affect our muscle growth, how our metabolisms work, etc. If we're not getting enough carbohydrates in a day, that's going to affect us, and so we want to know that. But if we're going to be looking at it as a maximum, like, oh my gosh, I want to make sure I only get this amount of food per day, then MyFitnessPal is never a good idea. It's always where we are with food. If we're in a really restrictive mindset, counting macros is not going to be a really good place for us. If we want to, or if we're doing it for the purpose of, like, I just want to lose weight, I just want to lose a few pounds, counting macros is not for us. If it's, I want to get stronger, I want to achieve, a body that's healthy, happy, and hormonally sound, and I want to collect data so that I'm empowered with the habits that I am doing, because if you have more data, you know how to make tweaks properly, then that is a really empowered place to come from, and MyFitnessPal and macro counting is a great idea. So it's really where you're coming from. I think everyone's very different, and you have to really practice self-awareness, or it can really mess you up. There are people out there that are super disordered, and they should never be opening an app like MyFitnessPal. She suspected endo due to painful intercourse and hirsutism acne, but I also have gut anxiety issues. Well, hirsutism acne sounds like more of a PCOS symptom. Painful intercourse could be anything from endometriosis to just having really bad vitamin E levels. Gut anxiety issues can be gut related, so you can't really diagnose based off of those things. I mean, I'm not a doctor, I don't do diagnoses, but you definitely, if you're trying to pursue a diagnosis like that, you want a doctor that's going to pursue the proper testing. Dude, there's literally MRI images showing proof of the biochemical abnormalities that cause anxiety and depression. Their illnesses point blank. I don't deny that, but remember, hormones and neurotransmitters are going to cause structural issues. Remember, energy begets structure. Is there any paradigm or belief about nutrition you used to believe in that you don't subscribe to now? Yes. So I was very anti-sugar. I was very pro fish oil, which I think fish oil is toxic poison. I was very pro nuts and seed, anti-dairy. I was very typical paleo approach, very low carb. So those are all things that I no longer am supportive of. I was very, very low to vegetables. Would this be the same case with chia seeds? I never want to create a demonization around foods. I think it's important to understand and just be empowered about your food. I don't care if someone eats chia seeds or not, but if someone's having regular PMS, horrible period pain, has hypothyroidism, adrenal issues, all these things, and chia seeds are contributing to that, then I don't understand why we would continue to eat those things. But I don't think chia seeds are bad or good. I think it's just, if you're struggling with all these issues and you continue to eat those foods that are possibly driving the issues, then it doesn't make any sense. Do you think food intolerance testing is worth doing? No, it's not accurate at all. Personally, it's just a good elimination diet. Chia seeds are gelatinous though, so wouldn't that be soothing? They don't have gelatin in them. I mean, they're jelly-like, I guess, but they're not they don't have gelatin in them. But yeah, I guess it could possibly help with, keeping the bowels flowing. But personally, I don't think chia seeds are bad if they're soaked, but everyone's going to be a little different. So my personal philosophy is very little nuts and seeds. A lot of my clients and fully nourished students see huge effects from implementing that, and it's just because of the phytoestrogenic perspective. I don't like the anti-nutrients in nuts and seeds. They're just not my favorite staple. And if you were in the wild, let's just look at it from an ancestral point of view, you wouldn't spend all your time and energy collecting a pile of chia seeds. No, you would be hunting, you would be, getting something that is going to actually feed you and your family. So I just look at it from an ancestral body perspective, and you probably wouldn't be eating a ton of nuts and seeds. I've been doing FN for a while now with some not so FN things, PUFAs, regular alcohol. I'm very healthy, regular periods with manageable pain, energy, and great moods. The only thing is I was already obese when I started, and I gained more weight since then. What should I do at this point that you believe? If you're still doing PUFAs, then the whole program is rendered useless in the sense of PUFAs are the fundamental thing that drives insulin resistance and drives weight gain. And so the one thing that I say is the most important thing in Fully Nourished is change your fats and be very conscious of your fats. If you have health goals and things like canola oil and soybean oil are still making a regular appearance in the diet, then almost everything else is not going to work. So remember, like I always emphasize, is if we're increasing our carbohydrates and we're still eating polyunsaturated fats, we are going to have a problem, a metabolic problem. And I would say alcohol and PUFAs are probably the two things that are going to affect our metabolisms the most, because B vitamins are depleted every time we drink alcohol. Usually our whole liver is going to be depleted of most of the B vitamins by the time we're done drinking, a glass or two of alcohol. And so we want to be replenishing those regularly, because those are really the cornerstone of our metabolisms and our liver and blood sugar balance. And then on top of it, we want to be very conscious of the fats we're consuming, because that's going to affect our whole metabolism as a whole. And so those are the things that, the two things that are probably, so what to do at that point is deal with the things that still haven't changed. I've never heard of painful intercourse relating to vitamin E levels. Could it also be due to low sex drive due to high testosterone, low progesterone, and maybe anxiety? Yeah, of course. Like, all those things could totally play a factor in painful intercourse. Sometimes it's pelvic floor dysfunction. A lot of people with endo and things like interstitial cystitis can definitely have a painful intercourse as well. Like, that's a symptom. But yeah, people tend to do really well with pelvic floor therapy when they have endometriosis. Thanks for the lives. Love them. I think I recall you saying that vitamin D supplementation can potentially cause problems. Can you elaborate, please? Yeah, vitamin D can pull calcium from the bones and cause calcification. And so vitamin D supplementation on its own in high amounts can potentially be problematic. Not saying it always is, but usually a vitamin D deficiency is a magnesium deficiency. And it's because magnesium is needed as a cofactor to make vitamin D from sunlight. And so since a majority of the population is magnesium deficient, a majority of the population is vitamin D deficient. And so really a vitamin D deficiency is almost always a magnesium deficiency. And that's pretty much what I gotta say about that. The vitamin D causing problems is mostly from the calcification it can possibly cause. If it's gonna calcify your tissues and calcify your cells, it can potentially cause lots of problems with mineral uptake and thyroid health, and in turn it could possibly increase ACTH, which is in fact a stress hormone. So vitamin D, you can really call it hormone D, because vitamin D is really a hormone. Hormone D supplementation is a little on the riskier side. We want to be making vitamin D from the sun. And if we're chronically deficient in vitamin D, we are chronically magnesium deficient. But yeah, and just to go back to that comment that was like, dude, you can see on an MRI the structural changes or the biochemical responses of the brain. Yeah, totally. You can definitely see those things. But I think like you mistook me for saying that, it's not an illness, it's a state of being. Again, it's a state of being in the sense of physically there is definitely biochemical imbalances going on, but what is driving that? Is it just that you're ill or that you're broken, or is it that there's actual factors that have been driving that all along, hormonally, neurotransmitters that are stemming from the gut, the gut-brain connection. We've got uterine-brain connection going on. We've got ovarian-brain connection going on. We've got quite a bit of the brain communicating with our hormonal glands, and so it's very important to remember that. What would be the reason for someone to supplement with vitamin K2, MK7? Vitamin K2 would mostly be supplemented if you have really bad digestive issues, really bad gut issues. Remember, vitamin K is going to be synthesized or created in the gut by gut bacteria, and so if gut bacteria has been off or bacteria is imbalanced, then K2 might be low. I personally supplement it with clients if their calcium is having a hard time getting into the bones and the teeth. So calcium's coming out through the hair, and so calcium needs to be redirected to where it's supposed to be, which is, like I said, the bones and the teeth. So vitamin K overall acts very similarly to CoQ10 oftentimes, but it is an antioxidant and a fat-soluble vitamin, and it plays a lot of factors and roles in liver detoxification and hormonal function and things like that. But the goal with vitamin K2 would be if you have like really bad, for example, really bad teeth issues, if your teeth are really sensitive, or maybe bone issues like osteoporosis going on. A lot of people don't know that they have those things, so that's kind of hard to figure out. But my biggest indicator for a need for vitamin K is having really high calcium. I think I've seen vitamin D, vitamin K mixtures. Yeah, they are out there, but oftentimes the vitamin D to vitamin K ratio is really off. So there's a lot of vitamin D, very little vitamin K. And to get enough vitamin K, you'd have to take a ton of vitamin D, so it doesn't work really well. What do you think of CBD oil supplementation, skincare products? I think it kind of doesn't address the root cause. I know we have a whole endocannabinoid system in our body, and so a lot of people will see symptoms reduce, but that doesn't fix the fact that we still have a magnesium deficiency or a sodium deficiency or a potassium deficiency. It doesn't fix the fact that we're not getting enough carbohydrates, or we're not getting enough protein, or we're progesterone deficient or estrogen dominant. Like, all those things still matter, even if your symptoms are feeling better taking CBD oil. Because if you don't feel better once you stop taking the CBD oil isn't shifting or changing anything in your body. It's just a Band-Aid for a symptom. And there's nothing wrong with taking something to be a Band-Aid to make you feel better in the short term, but you need to be still addressing the things that were driving that issue in the first place, if that makes sense. So it can be really awesome, very helpful for things like pain, especially like the creams and stuff. Some people, have implemented CBD oil and seen their cycles come back. So all good things. But at the same time, the goal is to get to the root of the issue that caused those issues in the first place. What's the best way to introduce dairy? Have no access to raw milk in my state. The best way would be like a really well-aged Parmesan cheese. So I don't know if you have like a Trader Joe's near you or some type of health food store, but a lot of times they have like those fancy cheeses, So just like a really good aged Parmesan, or like Asiago or something like that. That's usually a good starting point, or like a goat's cheese. And then goat's milk is also a great kind of gateway, because it is A2 dairy, tends to be pretty easy to digest, and that would be a good gateway as well. But usually the Parmesan cheese works well. It's very rich in vitamin K, it's very rich in calcium, so it's a great supplement or source of those things. Thanks so much for everything. Always look forward to your lives. Of course, I feel really accomplished that I caught up to your guys' questions. But I'll definitely do a last call right now. Oh, I've already gone for 46 minutes. That's crazy. Perfect. If you have a sensitivity to carrots, should I be cautious of other root vegetables as well, or does it completely depend? I think that would completely depend. If if you're sensitive to carrots and you feel it when you eat them, but you don't feel that with other foods, then I don't see why you would need to worry about those other foods. But if you don't know that you have a sensitivity to carrots, but it tested on a test, then that's pretty much useless information. So, but yeah, if you are sensitive to carrots but you feel fine with other root vegetables, I wouldn't make an issue out of something that's possibly not an issue. But yeah, there's quite a few people that are sensitive to carrots, and I think it's the oxalates in the carrot, possibly. The liver is having a hard time breaking those down. But there's quite a few of you that have sensitivity to carrots. Is it okay to eat shrimp every day, or maybe safe catch tuna? I'm trying to implement more protein based on my weight, and I don't want to be eating chicken every day. I don't blame you. I personally will do a shellfish or a fish every day. Tuna's not my favorite, but it tends to be pretty low fat, so it can be a good source, especially if you're looking for something easy or cheap. But yeah, I think it's better to get enough protein than to stress about where you're getting the protein. I think it's much better to get protein than to not at all, or to obsess about it. But yeah, I think it's finding what works for you. Some people, personally, I'll give you guys an example. If I don't eat eggs every day, I feel weird. I need to eat eggs every day and I feel better. It's just a weird phenomenon where I need to eat them every day. Or I just don't feel quite as grounded or mentally clear, or it's something, it's just off. So like I haven't had eggs today, so I'm gonna have them for dinner because like I need them. It's something, it's like weird. I just always crave them. I always feel weird without them. And then personally, like I feel really good when I do collagen, at least like 4 tablespoons or 4 scoops of collagen a day. When I don't, I just feel a little off. So I definitely have kind of figured out what proteins I need in my diet regularly so that I'm feeling, my tip-top self. Hi, thanks for answering all of our questions. Of course, it's a Q&A, you guys. You can ask as many as you want. I suffer from PCOS and I'm currently struggling with intense sugar cravings and I'm trying to break that cycle. Where should I start? That's an amazing question. And remember, guys, that I know that a lot of what PCOS culture will tell you, and I call it PCOS culture because it's really become like this weird culture, is that they'll tell you that sugar is the devil in regards to PCOS. And a lot of women who have PCOS are struggling with being overweight, right? There's an extra amount of energy being stored into the fat cells. And so we think that this is an excess of energy, meaning if we're overweight, we need to make sure we're not getting too much energy. But what's happening here, interestingly enough, is our cells are starving for sugar. Hence the sugar cravings, right? You're craving sugar because you need energy. Every single cell in your body runs off of sugar. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you're getting a high quality carbohydrate with every single meal and snack. This is going to look like fruit, maybe some orange juice, maybe some white rice, maybe some potatoes, some sweet potato, and you want to have enough of that every single day, at least like 100 grams a day, preferably split up throughout meals, paired with protein, and you'll find that your sugar cravings become a lot less once you give yourself permission to have high quality carbohydrates, because sugar cravings are your body's crying out for sugar, and sugar is just carbohydrates. So sugar is not bad, sugar is not the devil, sugar is not evil, sugar is energy, and carbohydrates all break down into sugar. And so if you get high quality carbohydrates into your diet, the sugar cravings will cease, because cravings are just a compass for what your body needs, right? If we have intense cravings for something, whether that's red meat, whether that's sugar, whether that's breads, we have a need that we're not meeting, and so our body is screaming at us and letting us know, hey, this is what I need. And if not, eventually, if we don't heed its warnings, what happens? We binge, right? A binge happens because our body has now overridden our brain and is making us consume something, really without our control. Currently trying to take the skin off while eating my butternut squash. I think a little bit of squash skin isn't going to kill somebody. I just, as a rule of thumb, I usually will remove all the skin off of root vegetables and squashes. A lot of times they just contain the saponins, and saponins are, for example, like when a carrot is in the ground or a sweet potato is in the ground, there's going to be a lot of like bugs and worms and things crawling around, and so that vegetable needs to be protected, and so it's going to have some antibacterial effects. Have you ever heard of Young Living's progesterone serum? Yeah, I think it's, what is it called again? I forget. Progestins Plus. It's not my favorite. It's just overpriced and not my favorite. But I personally prefer Progest-E by Kenogen, or Ona's progesterone oil and vitamin E, or like a cream like Emerita or Smoky Mountain Naturals. Like, those are my preferences. But Progestins Plus, some people say they like it. I just personally, essential oils can be an iffy kind of subject. Yeah, I'm curious about Young Living progesterone too. I don't like when something's combined with other things. I don't like blends of things, because if you react poorly to something, you're less likely to figure out what it is. You're going to think like, oh gosh, it's the progesterone. It could also be, I think there's like frankincense in there and some other oils. And also, you'd have to technically apply that directly to your skin. And I don't know if the other oils are diluted, but you guys know how I feel about undiluted essential oils going on the skin. Not a fan. Those phenols will go directly to that fatty tissue of your thyroid. I don't do undiluted essential oils. Can you give an overall explanation of how to read the HTMA sometime? Yeah, of course. I have a story, a highlight underneath my profile that does have, I think, one or two of breakdowns. I've actually been wanting to do a case study of somebody. I wanted to show you guys her Dutch test. I'm just waiting on her retest. So we've done a Dutch test a year ago and a retest, and then we did a mineral test about, I want to say 4 months ago, and a retest. So I'm just waiting on her Dutch test, and I wanted to do like a comparison, and we'll do like a whole case study where I'll walk you guys through 4 months of balancing minerals. And I wanted to show her because she's been struggling with, she's not menopausal yet, but kind of like that perimenopausal stage. And so she's been struggling with like just some weight gain, some low metabolism issues, some estrogen dominance issues, not making enough progesterone, just like, you know, basic stuff. And she started moving so many metals. Like, it was so crazy because when she came to me, her calcium was off the chart. She had a huge calcium shell, huge magnesium shell, and then we've been working on getting the calcium down. Her calcium was like 450, and now it's like at 2 something. It's still off the charts, but it's way lower. And she's moving all this aluminum out of her body and all this tin. And so she's now starting to really get these detox reactions. And so she was still struggling with some lingering gut issues. She actually came to me with digestive problems at first. And then we got them under control. And so we didn't run a GI map then. But now it's like those things are coming back. And so we ran a GI map, and sure enough, she has a parasite. It's craziness. So I really wanted to share her case with you because I like her case. It's like layers. It's onions. We're layering the onions. How do you feel about multivitamins? I have the Mary Ruth's Daily Liquid Multi. I like it because it's oil free and I don't take it every day. Is that okay? Personally, I'm not as familiar with her blend. I don't tend to go for multivitamins, just mostly because the blends usually have such low amounts of these individual nutrients, it renders them useless. But I think it's really important for people to take where they're at. If you're not gonna, eat nutrient dense, you're not gonna do all the things you want to be doing, and you want to kind of just be covering your bases, I think it's a good option. But I'm not really familiar enough with her multivitamin. But it being iron free is an amazing start. I tend to like her vitamins and minerals. I've supplemented her vitamin K before. I just didn't like it because I couldn't get enough vitamin K for the money. I had to take 5 times the dose that they gave me, and so it ended up not lasting me very long. But it seemed like it was pretty high quality. But overall, I'm not familiar enough to really make a comment on it, but I'm sure it's probably pretty high quality. It seems like her supplements are. Has anybody tried a probiotic spray for their skin before? I know those are kind of popular. I was seeing them pop up. I have a few clients with eczema and these weird skin rashes, and so of course we're working on liver health and we're working on gut health, but in the meantime it can sometimes be helpful to find some things that help kind of reduce eczema, because it can be really irritating and painful. And so we were thinking about doing some probiotic sprays to help with that, just to see if that would maybe help reduce the eczema. But I was wondering if anyone has had any experience with that. But yeah, it looks like Instagram's about to cut me off. I'll do a last call for questions. I have about 2.5 minutes. And if you have something in the back of your mind that you've been thinking about asking, just ask it, please. And I'll answer it before I go. But thanks for those of you that have spent 2 hours with me. I really appreciate you. It gives me peace of mind because I like to eat the same things every day for months on end, sometimes eating fully nourished. Yeah. No, I think that can be very helpful. Remember, the best multivitamin is going to be grass-fed beef liver and oyster. So getting those 2 things every week in are going to really make a difference in regards to nutrient status and mineral status, and can really make a huge difference, really. I think we underestimate the power of nutrient-dense foods, but they are incredible. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a really good night. I'll probably pop on stories tomorrow and do some type of informational story. Maybe on PCOS. I haven't talked on that in a while. But yeah, I hope you guys have a good night and sleep tight, and I'll see you tomorrow.